Hello there, YouTubers. Prophet here, doing a list, well, a new part of my channel of why these cards got banned. So we'll start off with Exchange of Spirits. Now, there was an OTK built with Exchange of Spirits and Machiavelli the Destroyer. Basically, what you tried to do was deck yourself out. That sounds stupid, but bear with me. You decked yourself out by first putting Machiora into the grave. So Machiora lets you activate traps from your hand, so you could always activate cards that gave you draw power, like Reckless Greeds and things like that. This deck worked mainly when there was no banned list because it was just overpowered because you used Pot of Greed and other things that gave you a lot of draw power, and then hand destruction and things like that to fill up your grave. And then you would play, once you have at least 15 monsters in grave, you would then play Exchange of Spirit, which then, if you have 15 or more cards in your graveyard, you pay 1,000 life points, and then both players swap their decks with their graves. So initially, by decking yourself out, you got a full deck back, and you decked your opponent out. So because of Machiora, you can activate this card during your turn. So you decked your opponent out before they even started. So that's why those got banned, because that deck was just overpowered. It was basically you go first, you win. There was no question about it. Hands down, you win. Pot of Greed, obvious. You don't go minus, you just +2. Last turn, what people tried to do was, this was kind of a last hope card, literally. But when you had 1,000 life points or less, you would special summon one card from your, both players special summon a card from their deck. Both monsters are forced to attack, and whichever monster is last card standing, that player wins the duel. So, but if both monsters are on the field, I believe it goes to a draw, or if any other result appears, like both monsters don't leave or both monsters die, it goes to a draw. So people would usually go, "Oh, I'll just drop Obelisk. I win. There is nothing you can get. There's nothing in your deck that can get past this 4K beta." Or they would be smart and go for they would go for Jaugen or things like Jaugen. Database. Oh, okay. They would go for things like Jaugen, the spiritualist, which I'll bring up, but that actually that's effect while it's on the field, your opponent cannot special summon monsters, so you get a free monster. Your opponent doesn't get a monster. Since yours is the only monster on the field, you win. So your opponent would do things like that to basically semi-cheat you out of a game, but enough with that. Then Mirage of Nightmare. So this card was one of those cards where you cleared your hand, and then you play it, you get to draw 4 during your opponent's standby phase, but during your 4, during your turn, you must discard the same amount of cards you drew. So for Dark Worlds, this was no problem, but it was at random, so if you discarded this will make Dark Worlds more broken. But what people used to do was they would draw 4 and then get rid of this during their opponent's turn, so they would just went plus, or if they were using Dark Walls, they would just plus and then plus again by discarding, and that would stay on the field, giving them endless pluses. So then we'll go on to Mind Master. I keep on saying Mr. Mind, not Pokemon, not Pokemon. Mind Master. This one let out a lot of plays for Psychics, which made them. It was able for Psychics to make a first turn Beast, Barkian, or Landois, or if you were lucky enough, which was very, very consistent actually, you can make at least Beast or Barkian during your first turn if you open Mind Master, and I think Mind Master one of the psych and was able to bring out one of the psychics. So if you didn't draw into Mind Master while it was one, you would use Psychic Witch to put it to the field, and then you would just make Beast Barkian, or there was one version of this which I did actually see. It was an Exodia variant that ran this and a bunch of psychic monsters, and then the rest of the cards in the deck were all draw power, so you would clear all your psychics out with Mind Master, and then you would just use, along with the field spell psychic, with the psychic field spell, so you don't have to pay life points to use it. Then they played a spell so they wouldn't take damage from if the field spell went, and then they just kept on drawing until they reached to Exodia. So this was a bit like a substitute build. Oh my god. This was a bit like a substitute build for the new version of it. Monster Reborn. I see why it still hasn't come back, because of the Satella Knights, and it would open more plays with them, except it's one of those cards, it gets banned for so many formats, but will come back. Royal Oppression, this was one of those cards where you just played it. You set up your board, you played it, and your opponent couldn't do naff all to stop you. Ring of Destruction, same again, you would do your plays, set this, and then if your opponent's going to do a big push with a big monster, you just play this, and either it'll go to a draw or your opponent will be on so little life points you just win. So that sort of cheated people out of games, but it was a good card of its format. 6 Cents. Now this was a weird one. It came back during the E-Dragons format, where Dragon Rulers literally ruled everything. And it came out strange, partway through a format, it became legal. And this card, for Dragon Rulers, Light Swans, things like that, this was not minus. You literally declared 2 numbers, roll the dice. If one of those numbers appeared on the dice, you would draw that many cards from your deck. So Dragon Ruler players would just go 5 and 6. So either way they got advantage, either they get a 4 or something and dump a load of cards to the grave, or they would drop plus 5 or 6, and then they would have a real high hand advantage against you. So that's why that got banned straight after the E-Dragons. That kind of died when the E-Dragons died as well. Trishula. Now, this card I don't really see why it's still banned, but I can kind of understand as well at the same time. I still don't see that as a major reason to ban it, but when it's synchro summoned, you target a card in your opponent's hand, field, and grave, and banish those cards. Now, this is a bit like, this was Ouroboros's real form. The easier way, Sam's brought this out easily, a lot of decks brought this out with ease, but the thing was you couldn't dress any cards that basically said to negate targeting wouldn't work on Trish because of the bit where it says target a card in his hand at random. So it wouldn't work because he's not actually picking one out, it's at random, so it doesn't actually work on it. So it would literally have to say to target everything except when it says to choose one card from their hand at random. Not all of the effect is targeting, so things like dress and that wouldn't work on Trish. Shockmaster. Now this card should stay banned for quite some time because of Satella Knights, because, well, they're going to rank 4 as easy, and God help us all if this comes back, because Satella Knights will just do their big plays, then make Shockmaster, declare traps or spells and monster effects, anything, and we will just be screwed because they will have this and Stellar Nova Alpha and we won't be able to do anything. And hopefully it won't come back as long as Satella Knights have that massive advantage. Bryanak, this got banned during the Mermail time because this held Mermails a lot, and it got limited because of the Infinity loop you could actually do with it. You could actually do a Bryanak and Trish loop. It was rare, but if you pulled it off, you could banish everything your opponent had with just those two, and just an Infinity loop, but that was one launcher was at 3, so that was rare. And then the Dark Strike Fighter. Now, there was a version of this that I actually saw. You would usually bring this out, and some of the monsters do a crap ton of damage to your opponent in the, I think it was a Tengu build that used this, do a crap ton of damage to your opponent. and then tribute itself off and any other monsters you had to deal the rest of damage. So basically, it was Cowboy of its time, except a more broken version, because lots of people, if you had the frog build, you would go Substitute, ditch a load of frogs to the grave, then you would use Rodin's effect to bring it back, and then Darkstrike Fighter, tribute off, deal 400, Rodin Totem comes back, ditch it off, burn again, and keep on burning, and then you attribute itself off finally and burn your opponent for game. So that kind of was Cowboy, but worse of its time. This has been the why these cards are banned, and hopefully I will do more sections on these, or why these cards are limited in the sections. So thank you for watching, and